Spring is here in Sydney, and I can see groundsmen are rolling wickets and marking creases, much to Johnny Bairstow's dismay. Welcome back to the Cricket Unfiltered podcast. I'm Menners. I'm joined by my new co-host, cricket commentator and cricket expert, Gav Joshi. Gav, how are you?
I'm well, Menners. How are you? You're looking better in that studio. I think your voice has a different tone to it when you're in that studio.
Absolutely, we've got all the soundproofing here and great microphones. But yeah, really, we're back on a sort of regular recording schedule now. The
hmm
Ashes is over. We've had a little bit of a wild August, getting Stuart McGill on the show and Jackson Bird and Kumar Sangakkara. But now the cricket news is coming thick and fast, and we've got a lot to talk about today. We've got the Australian performance in South Africa, where they absolutely smashed them in the recent T20 series that ended this morning, our time. There was also the BBL and WBBL draft overnight and some other bits of cricket news. Also, I spoke to rising young leg spinner Tanveer Sangha. So we've got a few minutes with him to play later on. But, Gab, before we get into all that, how are you feeling about the impending cricket season? I mean, there's a lot to be excited for. We've got a massive 50 over World Cup, and at the same time, Australia's domestic season will kick off.
Yeah, we touched on the show last week, Menners. Look, I think it's just what's going to happen in the white ball format. I think the summer seems so distant at the moment, especially in August. Well, we're turned into September now, but you look at newspapers and cricket, it's still not quite even in the back 4 or 5 pages. Little bit of discussion on radio, but yeah, and I feel the same as the public. I think a lot of interest around the footballing codes and finals at the moment. But I think we'll warm to cricket. I think it's weird because I think normally you have the mains, you have the entrees and the mains. So I think we've got the mains first here with the Cricket World Cup, and a bit of the entrees coming up a bit later with Pakistan. And I think everything about David Warner's retirement and everything, whether he gets picked or not, I think that's something in the distant future. I think they'll always, and I think it's going to be a quick transition. I think the day the NRL Grand Final, the AFL Grand Final finishes with the World Cup, I think it's just going to be a quick switch over.
Absolutely. It's a bit like the way the Ashes ended and then everyone got swept up in Matilda's fever. Now you've got the
Yeah.
footy finals. And, Australians are very, I would say, seasonal based. Like, I'm obviously a cricket tragic, a cricket obsessive. I will watch and listen all the time. But a lot of Australians, as soon as footy's over, they pull out the stumps and put them in the backyard, and the backyard cricket games start. So, yeah, that's all
Already,
very imminent.
I've already seen my coaching clinics. I've already seen the adjacent nets picking up. Parents are out there at about 4 p.m. after school. So I know it's been a big change in the last 10, 12 days.
Absolutely. All right. Now let's get into the cricket headlines brought to you by Piccolo Podcasts, my podcast production company based in Ultimo. If you need a podcast produced, head to piccolopodcast.com.au. All right. Now let's get into the review of the South African T20 series that was just completed. Australia dominated, winning all three games, a complete performance. And Gav, I thought this was really encouraging because some people have pointed out that South Africa didn't have their strongest side, but neither did Australia. And we were superb in all facets, bat and ball in the field. It was incredible stuff.
Well, what is the strongest side? I mean, we touched on it last week, Menace, with just 3 different formats, so many franchise cricket. A team, apart from a World Cup, I doubt are going to put their strongest team on the paddock, especially in T20 cricket around the world. So I see it as an opportunity. You just look at someone like, Mitch Marsh's captaincy, we'll get to that, but, Sean Abbott, Nathan Ellis, and yet you said about Tanveer Sangha, Matt Short, so yeah, look, I enjoyed it. I thought, just to have other cricketers you can watch. There's just so much cricket at the moment. But it's refreshing because all our focus has been on Marnus and Smith and Warner, and you sort of go in there and he's the new sort of group, of course, different formats. But I think even as us, as sort of cricket followers, listeners, we work in the industry, we're still getting to that point where we have to realize that, if we see David Warner and Steve Smith, next match, we're not going to see those guys for Australia. And I think we're still getting used to that, having raised in the the 90s and early 2000s, and even till sort of 10 years ago.
You're right. This team, a lot of youngsters, a lot of big bash stars given an opportunity, and I think it was fantastic. So look, rather than go through each game individually, I thought we'd just take a holistic approach and look at the whole series. So Australia won all 3 games. They batted first in the first game and set 227, huge total. Mitch Marsh and Tim David, the destroyers there. And then in the next 2 games, Australia chased down 2 targets pretty comfortably with some exciting batting. So clearly the standout with the bat for Australia was their captain, Mitch Marsh. He averaged 186 for the series, a blistering 92 not out in the first game, followed that up with a half century in the second game. And he's just continuing that form we saw in the Ashes, which was so impressive. He hits the ball hard. He seems to be thriving with the leadership. And he now is such a vital cog to both T20 and one-day sides, and maybe even the test side, because of the power, the brutality. And Gav, I think this is, I don't know, for me, this is so satisfying, because if you go back and we're talking about the 10-year anniversary of Cricket Unfiltered, back in 2013 when the show started, I was super high on Mitch Marsh. I was buying all the Mitch Marsh stocks there were. And then I had a series of disappointments over the coming years as he struggled to live up to that potential. But, going back 10 years, he was a prodigy. He came out of the under-19 team. He was touted as being the most talented cricketer from his family. And, looking at Sean and Jeff preceding him, he was, he was seen by Australian cricket as this great white hope, a bit like Cameron Green is now. And finally, we're seeing that class come out. Such a great series for him.
Yeah, well, even if you look back 12 months ago, all Australia was in praise of this new emerging all-rounder, Cameron Green. I think Mitch Marsh was almost a forgotten man. And here he was phenomenal in that T20 World Cup campaign that Australia won in October in Dubai in 2021. And then it's just, now it seems like Mitch Marsh is like you said, the stock that you want to buy at the moment, because, and I mentioned it, I think it's just a freedom. I don't think Mitch Marsh is trying to prove to anyone now. I think he's like, elite sportsman. I'm here to go enjoy myself. I'm not going to judge myself. People have already judged me. It can't get any worse. So why not enjoy it? And sometimes, we go and play multiple sport, or we have different tasks, and when there's nothing to lose, that's when often sportsmen, or even general us as humans, tend to perform at our best. And I think that's what's coming in to Mitch Marsh. And it's as long as he stays in that mindset. And I think that's the key role of a coach or the skipper and Pat Cummins. I just like the way he's just going about his business at the moment.
Yes, a fantastic series for him. I do think one technical thing he's made a change is he plays a little bit, he plays with softer hands in defense now. I think one of his issues, in the past, was he used to go quite hard at the ball defensively. And I think now he's actually a better defensive player. And obviously when he goes hard, he can hit the ball as hard as anyone, but he's just got that ability now to keep out the good ball, where I think early in his career, he got caught on the crease a bit. He would go hard at the ball, but he seems a lot more relaxed, better balance, and just overall, he's really living up to that potential. Also in the series, I thought Matthew Short played pretty well at the top of the order. That he was given a chance to open with Travis Head. He made a nice 66 in the second match. But he's someone, who's done so well in the Big Bash. I wasn't quite sure how that would translate into international cricket, but I actually think he's looking better and better.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, he played a lot of Shield cricket as well for Victoria. So you're thinking, I think it's taken Matt Short's probably 28, 29 years of age now. I think it's get that time where cricketers probably need to understand what's the best format, where they'll get the maximum amount of them, what suits them. And I think Matt Short's probably realised that with that phenomenal BBL season that he's had. And yeah, you're right. I think once that confidence is there, and given the choice, open the batting with Travis Head, And I think that's where I think a leadership of someone like a Mitch Marsh, where he said, just go out and enjoy yourself. We want to smash the first ball. And I think that's where, going back to Mitch Marsh, I think you got to credit him because he knows what expectations are. So when he's taking on a leadership role, he understands that how much pressure Matt Short might feel. So, he might just say, look, even if you're going out and getting bowled first ball, doesn't matter. I'm giving you 3 goes. Don't feel, because Mitch Marsh felt the other way. There was a whole lot of expectations, and when he felt didn't succeed. So I think that's probably helped Matt Short a bit as well. But yeah, outstanding series. I mean, Travis Head's in there from the whispers I've heard. They want to keep him in that top order because they sort of want to see how he gels in that top order spot. Looking forward to looking ahead for the World Cup as well.
Yes, and speaking of Travis Head, he made a wonderful 91 of 48 deliveries in the final match. Australia chasing 191 for the win. Also, Josh Inglis, 42 of 22. I do really like the way he plays. We know how good Head is, and I think at the top of the order, he's going to make a home for himself in white ball cricket in both formats, and especially once Warner goes out of the 50 over side. You could bring a right-hander up to open the batting with Travis Head. The other player, Tim David. Now, he's an interesting one. He made a blistering 64 in the first match, I think, of 28 balls. It was just phenomenal. Didn't get much of an opportunity in the next 2 games, but he and Mitch Marsh were just imperious in that first match. And as a result of that, he's been added to Australia's one-day squad for the rest of this South African tour. So there's 5 matches left. I think that's as backup to Glenn Maxwell in the World Cup, because Australia needs a finisher in those last 10 overs of a 50 over match. And they've earmarked Maxwell clearly to play that role with Stoinis. If Maxwell goes in under an injury cloud, they need a backup. And Tim David couldn't be a better power hitter to come in with, 10, 15 overs in a one-day game and just go off.
Yeah, absolutely. I said it on the podcast last week. I didn't have him in my 15, but more you think about it, just the injuries Glenn Maxwell's had, who's the ideal backup? And it probably is Tim David, but I think he has to limit the role. I think what the selectors have to consider is, say, can Tim David do a job when there's still about 15 overs left in an ODI game? So I think but if he's there as a backup, you feel like he could make his way into that sort of 15, 16-man squad to India. So, look, what I like technically about it, like there's been a lot of theories about how to shut him down, is to sort of bowl outside that, off stump and block a certain areas, because he's very much a leg side dominant player. But I think Tim David, you saw him in the IPL as well, evolve his game of power hitting sort of over sort of point and even third man area. Because the general tendency is to bring everyone up, and sort of he doesn't actually slice the ball or play it towards sort of behind point. He's not, but I think he's learned that over time. So I think, and in that blistering innings, you saw Tim David hit, I think he hit 3 or 4 fours, like sort of in that cover point area. So I think that was really encouraging.
Yeah, I think he could be a bit of an X factor for this World Cup. So that's the batting. They're the real standouts for me. Mitch Marsh, Head, David, Short. I did like that contribution from Josh Inglis in that last match, and I do think Inglis is a better option than Alex Carey in our T20 side. I think he's a more dynamic player. He's beautiful with the gloves. I mean, that stumping of Tanveer Sangha in the first match where he whipped the bails off so quick. I'm so impressed by Inglis. Not to say I'm not impressed by Carey. They're both great cricketers.
Yeah.
But from what I've seen of Inglis up close when we've been doing Shield matches, everything he does drips with class.
Yeah, I agree. I think time might come quickly post sort of the World Cup, where I think we'll probably see Inglis as the wicketkeeper in the T20 format. I think he's just got so much. He's dynamic, and I think Alex Carey is, while he's good, I don't know about if he has the same power hitting capacity as someone like an Inglis. So I think so. It could just come down to how many left-handers are in the middle and right-handers, because that's become such a key nature of sort of the T20 matchups and strategies.
I also think Inglis could make a run at the test spot as the keeper. I mean, Kerry's done well, but he hasn't nailed it. He faded away terribly on the Tour of India. He faded away terribly on the Tour of England with the bat. I mean, he's a great cricketer. Don't get me wrong. I think, we're very lucky to have him. He's a very good gloveman. But I actually think Inglis could put real pressure on Alex over the next couple of years.
Right now, I disagree. I think there's a big gap there, Menners. I actually think, I think Alex Carey's just, like, just look at his glove work. Yeah, it did taper off a little bit at the back end of sort of India, and also the back end of sort of the Ashes. But you just got to remember, like, in those sort of conditions that he's not very used to, he hasn't had a lot of experience in. I thought his keeping in India was phenomenal. I think he outkept, even K.S. Barrett, who's the Indian keeper. I think that's how good it was. And also in the Ashes, yes, he did miss a couple of important chances in the back end, but I think his glove work is phenomenal. I think not just that, I think he's well loved by the cricketers. I think he forms a great integral part of that team. What Pat Cummins wants, he wants these guys who are sort of, they fit in really well. There's no, and I think Nathan Lyon has a great rapport with him. Travis Head has a great rapport with him. So I think so. I genuinely believe that I think Alex Carey is there for a bit of a long run. I think he's phenomenal.
Well, judging by the loyalty of the Australian selectors, I would agree with you that they don't tend to make fast changes. But I do think Inglis's upside with the bat could be more than Carey's. Like, I think Inglis could be that Gilchrist that comes in and smacks a runner ball 80 and changes test matches.
Well, if Australia want to play that way, then but I can't see this team going down that method. I mean, you got Smith and Marnus and even someone like a Cam Green, a Carey. Look, a lot of people have just gone out and probably said that they've seen England bat in the manner that they did, and suddenly every team wants to capitalize. But you got to have the you got to have the right artillery, and I think Australian cricket. I mean, let's face it, the Ashes was close, and probably Australia didn't win it, but they did retain the Ashes. So, and I think Carey fits into that. I think just the way that you probably want Australia to play, I think he's an ideal person. If they go down in 2 years' time with the new upcoming stars, maybe 2 or 3 years on, where Smith is out, Marnus is out, or Warner's gone. If they're looking for a more sort of Travis Head kind of approach, and who knows, Travis Head might sort of want that approach because he could. I'm calling it a revelation here, Menners. I think Travis Head will be the next Australian skipper, no doubt about it. But yeah, like, so he might build that, and Inglis might fit into that. For now, the way Australia's playing, I think Alex Carey is ideal. He's perfect, and I reckon unless he has a really poor, not just a summer, but in general, but he's just like a type of batter who always gets runs. I still think Alex Carey, you've got to look at, he might not get the big score, but I think tendency is he always scores those 20 and 30, and there's an important sort of a 60, 70 run partnership. So, and which has been like so important. Yeah, so I don't think so. I think Inglis is a long way away.
All right, okay. Now let's get into the Australian bowling from this T20 series and some real standouts. Firstly, Sean Abbott. He played all 3 matches, 8 wickets, economy of 7 runs per over, average per wicket 8.75. Stoinis also took 5 wickets, which is a good series for him. Economy 8.14. Berendorf played 1 game and took a couple of wickets. Tanveer Sangha, the revelation, played the first game of the series after Zampa was ruled out with a bit of a flu, and he took 4 for 31 on debut, the best figures by an Australian on debut in T20 cricket since the very first T20 international. I think that was Michael Kasparitz took the best figures back then. And Nathan Ellis also played 3 matches, economy 8.6, took 3 for 25 in that second match. So I think here is where there's a real, I guess, philosophical approach that Australia needs to look at. I think Sean Abbott and Nathan Ellis are making claims to be better white ball bowlers than Hazelwood, Cummins, not Stark, because I think Stark's record is unbelievable. Yeah. But Sean Abbott, he's making a pretty strong argument to be included in Australia's first choice T20 side.
He is, no doubt about it. I just, they got a sort of and I guess a series like this against South Africa is a really good indicator, and they probably need more series leading up to, the World Cup in West Indies and America in sort of, 12 months time or 10 months time. They need to play a lot of and be put under pressure. And I like what they've done. They had dedicated roles for Abbott and Ellis. They sort of took did bowl with the new ball. And once you're put under pressure, it's how you handle the pressure that will sort of determine if they're ready for that next level against the best players. Nathan Ellis has played IPL. Sean Abbott probably hasn't been put under that much pressure. I look at a couple of Sean Abbott's games for Australia in the T20, and he's bowled a couple of the penultimate overs and has been smacked around. So, and I look at someone like an Andrew Tye as a good example. Menners, like, phenomenal cricketer, phenomenal death bowler in the BBL. You want to go to him, but there were a couple of clutch matches in T20 internationals where Andrew Tye hasn't held up. He's been hit for 18, 20 runs. Now, that could be the nature of T20 cricket, but
well, I think the batter's got to know his slower balls pretty his variety.
Yeah, I think so. You're right. So I think
But I think Abbott, though, one thing about Sean Abbott is he's got beautiful seam position at the moment. The way he bowls with the new white ball is phenomenal. I think he gets more out of it than any of the other Australian bowlers, apart from maybe Stark. But even Abbott's seam position and angle on the crease, shaping and swinging away, it's very compelling.
Yeah, you're right. I think Sean Abbott can bowl with the new ball and the white and in the back end. I think he can. In fact, I think it's a good shot to go to India, because if the nature of the pitches are dry, we haven't got a lot of dew, he actually gets a bit of reverse swing as well. So, look, it's hard. I don't think they're there. I understand they're pushing these two, Cummins, but that's, I think that's.
But do you think, though, on Indian wickets that, we've got three tall fast bowlers, Stark, Hazelwood, Cummins, don't you think an Abbott or an Ellis with a different build, different delivery, action, trajectory, that's it, different release point, would be valuable?
Yeah, I agree. I don't disagree. So I think one of them will get picked for the World Cup. Which one it is, I don't know. I think Australia will go with it. It will be big three quicks. Abbott adds a bit of batting, probably a bit more experience as well, knows a lot of the New South Wales players. Yeah, you're right. I think it's a closer. But going back to your original question, is he pushing those two out? Not yet. I think, and Abbott's still a sort of tall man. I think he still hits the deck a little bit more than Nathan Ellis. So if they're looking for totally different, then I think Nathan Ellis sort of, but he did get smacked around a little bit. But look, if I was to take anyone, I think Australia will play the three quicks. Their secondary option will be use the all-rounders, and then it will be, if really need be, then play like a Nathan Ellis. But I would, my gut feel right now is I would take Nathan Ellis over Sean Abbott.
Oh, I like it. And I agree, he does offer something different, but just how gutsy does George Bailey and co want to be? I guess the other one for the bowlers to talk about is Spencer Johnson. Played 2 matches, took a couple of wickets, dreadfully unlucky in the third game. Had one of the South African batters plumb LBW in his first over, and the umpire didn't put the finger up. It was umpire's call, but you would expect that one to be given out. It was full swinging back into the right-hander, and he didn't get the luck. But again, Spojo, Spencer Johnson, certainly I think I don't think you'll see him in this 50-over World Cup. No. It'll be struggle to get in there, but I think you'll see him playing a lot of cricket for Australia. All right, that is it for the T20 series in South Africa. Australia dominating South Africa at home, 3-0. What a great way to start our campaign, not just for the 50-over World Cup, but also the 20-over World Cup next year. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back to continue on with the cricket headlines. You're listening to the Cricket Unfiltered podcast. I'm Menners, joined by my co-host Gav Joshi. We're going through the cricket headlines. Just a look, staying with the Australian side, the Australian A side played New Zealand A side last week in a 4-day game at Allan Border Field in Australia. New Zealand A absolutely spanked the Australian A side by 225 runs. And I guess the player for New Zealand to look out for there is Scott Kugelheim, who took 9 wickets for the match. Do you know much about him, Gav?
Yeah, he's been around for a while. He sort of swings the ball. He played a bit of IPL as well. There's a bit of he had a bit of an off-field incident, that sort of a bit of a setback for him as well. It could be rapid. It has had some stress fractures, but yeah, he does swing the ball. It's just like a bustling kind of bowler, and we've seen a bit of him in certainly the white ball format for New Zealand. So yeah, he's got plenty of potential. I think he must be in his mid-20s or late 20s, Menners.
Yeah.
Don't quote me on it, but yeah, he's been around for a while. Yeah, he's been around for a while. So, but
he's 31.
Yeah, he's 31. Yeah, so yeah, he's been around the New Zealand setup for a while now. But interesting to see.
He destroyed Australia A. So he took 9 wickets. A poor performance from Australia A at home, getting spanked by the Kiwis by over 200 runs. Certainly not going to be knocking the door down for test selection with that. Caleb Jewell, the Tasmanian left-hander, made a nice 78. He's sort of one player to look out for. All right, staying with domestic cricket, Gav, and this is something close to, I guess, our hearts because we'll be commentating on a lot of Shield cricket this summer. But there's been some big changes at Cricket New South Wales after a very disappointing year last year where they weren't able to win a Sheffield Shield match for the first time since the 1930s. And listeners to this podcast will have heard plenty of cricketers, Phil Jakes, Mike Whitney, Stuart McGill, all talking about what a catastrophe that was. Well, they've made big changes and I like them. The first one is Moses Enriquez has been given the captaincy again of the Shield side. I think that's a good selection because he's probably one of the only players that's assured of starting the season off in that top order. So I think it was good that they picked him as captain.
Yeah, it's quite interesting, isn't it? I mean, where's Curtis Patterson at? That's probably what I want to ask you, Menners, rather than, yes, they've given him all the captaincy and responsibility across 3 formats, but I want to ask you, what does that mean for Curtis Patterson?
I think Curtis Patterson's got to concentrate on scoring runs. He's had 2 middling seasons. Last year was very disappointing. The year before was just okay. But he's in such a sharp decline that I think it would be important for him to relinquish the leadership, or it's been taken away from him because he was dropped last summer. But I think it would have put too much pressure on him. I still think he's got a huge potential as a batter, Curtis Patterson. You know, he made that fantastic Test 100 against Sri Lanka, 144, I think, on Test debut. So, it's his second Test. So I think there's a big upside to Curtis Patterson, but New South Wales needs him to stand up. Like, he's not assured of selection. He'll have to earn his spot. He'll have to keep his spot. So his career, you could say, is at a crossroads.
Oh, it's a big call. I mean, look, one thing for sure, Curtis Patterson, I mean, he got some real rough decisions last year in the Shield. Probably stranded down the leg side a couple of times, a couple of LBWs, probably didn't go his way. Look, I think... And where would he bat? There's a lot of competition now at sort of that number 6 slot. You know, we've seen Cameron Green, Mitch Marsh has certainly come along. But you think...
Yeah, I don't think I'm not talking about him getting back into this range. I'm like, he might not even be playing for New South Wales if he has another bad year.
Well, that's a big call because, like you said, I mean, you look at... You sort of touched on it. Is Moses just in this team because he's the only person they can pick? And if that's the case, and that's what we've probably got the ring of these changes that will come to, is where is New South Wales cricket at? I mean, here we were, 4 years ago, Jack Edwards, Jason Sanger, likes of, Jilks is probably just maybe a little couple of years behind them in his development. But why haven't these players been able to sort of cement their squad, not just cement their name in the playing 11, but score runs? And I think that's probably why. I think there's probably a big reason, and I think throughout this,
I think New South Wales cricket has got obsessed with pathways and talent, and not actually what makes up a good cricketer. The ability to score runs and take wickets. How often have you seen players with all the talent in the world, but just can't translate that to runs on field? There is a skill with but being able to score runs. And sometimes it's not the pretty players that score runs. Look at Cameron Bancroft, one of the least attractive players to watch in Australian cricket. Not saying he's a bad player, but if you look the eye test, you would say, oh, this guy's a good cricketer.
Well,
but then he led the Shield last year with hundreds. So I think that's where Cricket New South Wales may have missed out. Like someone like a Dan Solway. Doesn't look like a great batter, but he was averaging 40 for first-class cricket, and they dropped him. Why?
Yeah, no, you've got an absolutely fair point. I mean, who's scoring the runs that, and how long is like someone like a Jason Sanger be given a go? Jack Edwards, we've talked about this. Matt Gilks. I think one important thing is if you look at someone like a Matt Gilks, I think he's been forced to open the batting. I hope that he bats at number 6 this summer, and they give him a good go because of this, a couple of the games that we were commentating at last year, once against Queensland. I think he, look, Queensland a really good attack, and Sticchetti and Michael Neser. And despite all that, I think New South Wales a bit of trouble. He went and scored, I think, a 70 or a 90 odd. So I think so. I think Matt Gilks is one guy to look out for. But you're right. I mean, what is stopping these developing players? And are they getting the balance right? You talked about Moses Henriques. What number does he bat? Like, what role does he have to play? Does he bat at number 6? And, do they give these guys a go? Or, as I've always said, I like an experienced guy like a Moses batting at number 4 and, young debutants or the inexperienced at 3 and 5. But what's inexperience? I mean, look at Jason Sanger. Do you call him an experienced cricketer at first class level now, Menners?
He is experienced and he should be doing better. That's just the cold, hard reality. Now, I just want to look at some other these changes because I think this is where perhaps New South Wales could turn the corner. They've brought on Michael Bevan and Shane Watson. Bevan to be a specialised batting coach, and Shane Watson to offer mentoring and mindset training for players. I had Shane Watson on Cricket Unfiltered a couple of years ago now, and I trapped him in the studio for an hour and a half, and we went through his whole career. And, one thing that was evident in that discussion was that Shane only got control of his mental game at the end of his career. And I actually do think Shane Watson could offer a lot to these young players with mindset and mentoring. And I think Bevan could offer a lot as a batting coach. I mean, he averaged almost 60 in first-class cricket. So, they're two players I think are great to have around.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and probably a batting consultant needed. I mean, Chandika Durasinga was, he's moved on to Bangladesh now as a head coach. But you probably needed, as Phil Jakes was the head coach. And maybe sometimes the head coach and the batting coach, it's such a responsibility that Phil Jakes probably had to look over the whole team and probably, in his sense, I'm not saying he's not doing his job, but there's just so much work for him that there's no batting expert there to work with these guys. So I think I like that. I think, Michael Bevan, if his role is just to work as a batting consultant, help develop the players and work on the technical side of things, then I think it's a really good move. It's okay to have so many people, but it's important that their roles don't confuse the players. If I'm a player and if I'm having a technical problem, do I go to Michael Bevan? Do I go to Greg Shipperd? Who do I go to? I think that's so. It's fine to.
But I think Shipperd's more your sort of conductor. Shipperd will stand at the top, and he's happy for the batting coach to take the lead on all that stuff. And I think one of the knocks on New South Wales cricket is that not a lot of the veterans had been invited into the setup recently.
Yeah, and I think Shane Watson thing is perfect. And we talked about Mitch Marsh started the show. Exactly same thing. I think their careers sort of, in a way, similar. There's so much expectation, so much talk, and then it wasn't until the back play. Like, I still think, this is a big call, Menners, but I think Shane Watson is, probably one of the best Australian T20 players. I think he's phenomenal. But it took him a while to get there. But yeah, I think he's good inclusion. Like I said, if there's clarity about their roles and how, the players know who to approach, as long as there's no, sometimes even consultants can step on other people's toes a little bit. As long as that doesn't happen, as long as a player has not got too much information in his head from different sort of a consultant to a batting coach to a bowling coach to the head coach, then it's totally fine. If New South Wales cricket have worked that out, it can only be for the better.
And then final changes to the selection panel, and I love this. Jeff Lawson has been made a selector. Stuart Clark has been made a selector. Also, Greg Mail and former Blue David Friedman, the left arm leg spinner, he's been made a selector. What I love about it,
I think David Friedman's been part of the pathway system for a while as well. And speaking of a lot of the New South Wales players, they're really highly rating. So clearly, he's one of the guys that even some of a couple of the news, Bo Casson, who's across the course in WA, who's talking about the role that Friedman's played amongst the young, because both of them are part of the development pathways and how important they've been for getting these guys to a certain level. So, and I think Menners, there is a challenge to take them. I'm not saying pathways coaches are a little bit more hands-on. I think they probably have to fine-tune techniques. While I think when you look at someone like a Greg Shipperd or maybe Phil Jakes, they're sort of sitting at the top. Do they actually have time to be it? Do the players need adjustment? It's more sort of the mental side of the game. It'll be interesting because some pathways coaches like doing that. I don't know if they can actually handle the top, because I think that's out of their nature to be able to do it. But of course, sometimes some want to jump to that opportunity because, it's more for your profile. It's also more for, your career advancement. But you have to realize if it suits you. And I've talked to a few players and they feel that the development coaches, they're great at that level, but I'm not sure if they're sort of great. And I could give it a really good example, not from Australia, then maybe from India, where, Rahul Dravid, one of the legends of the game, excellent at working with sort of the India A team, the under-19 teams. But as soon as he's gone to the Indian team, he probably hasn't got the results as someone like a Ravi Shastri. So, even I look at a Ricky Ponting, I think he's a really, really good sort of, development coach and pathways coach and batting consultant. But Ricky as a head coach, whether he wants to do it, who knows? He probably will be, but it's a big jump. It's a different, because these guys are really hands-on, and I don't know if the full sort of the managing team sort of thing suits them, while clearly it suits someone like an Andrew McDonald.
Also, I love Jeff Lawson and Stuart Clark being involved in the setup again. I mean, Jeff Lawson to me is one of the underrated greatest cricket minds in this country. I just think he's a superb scholar of the game. He reads the game well, and I like the fact that Stuart Clark pulls no punches. If someone is not performing in the Blues side, he will say you've got to drop them. I think New South Wales cricket is headed in the right direction.
Yeah, and I think it's to be able to connect, and we hear it from multiple sports now. If you have someone, and no respect to sort of Jeff Lawson, but there are some players and there's some things that can they connect with that next generation. Where Jeff Lawson probably as a coach, in dressing rooms, phones weren't essential part of lifestyles. Now they are. So how do you, the attention span probably for most people in the world is less. How do you manage that? So these are sort of challenges more sort of for maybe a Jeff Lawson. So that's why you find a lot of young coaches coming through who can connect. So I think New South Wales, just looking at the coaching, I think Shane Watson's playing that. Greg Shipperd, you've got to credit him because he's been around in the system for a long time. Michael Bevan, probably an old sort of style coach. So he's, Jeff Lawson, as you mentioned, he's in the setup now. Stuart Clark also, who they don't take any bullshit.
No, and I think it's a good mix because I think Jeff Lawson and Stuart Clark are involved with Sydney Premier Cricket. All right, I want to get on now to the Big Bash draft because last night we had the Big Bash and the WBBL drafts and some interesting selections. So the Adelaide Strikers got Rashid Khan, England all-rounder Jamie Overton, who was player of the series in the 100, and Adam Hose, who I think they had last year. No surprises there. But then the Melbourne Stars have gone for Harry Brook, Harris Ralph, who's obviously played there a lot, the Pakistan Quick, and Usama Mir.
Usama Mir, He's a leg spin bowler, I believe,
Mm.
from Pakistan. Quite tall. I think he's 6'3", and they like the way he gets a bit of bounce. So that's one of the reasons. I think
The
that
concern
Stars
for the
have gone for
Stars
him.
with the concern for the Stars with Harry Brook is there's speculation that he won't actually be playing much cricket because he's playing all formats for England. They're due to go to
Hmm.
India early next year, and so he might not actually come to the Big Bash. So that'd be a big disappointment for the Stars. I thought the Sydney Sixers did great. Tom Curran and James Vince obviously played for the Sixers before, but Rahan Ahmed, the England spinner, the leggy,
Yep.
picked for Sixers. I think that's a great pick. Um, and then the Hobart Hurricanes, Chris Jordan and Sam Hain. I think Sam Hain played at the Heat last year. Again, we know how good Chris Jordan is in the T20 game. And then they've picked a former New Zealand international, but he's actually got the American flag next to him, Corey
Yeah.
Anderson, who we could see lining up for the Yanks in the World Cup next year. So they're good picks, I think, so far for the Sixers and the Hurricanes. The Renegades, big picks for them. They only went for two, but they got Quinton de Kock and Mujib ul Rahman. I mean,
Yep.
Mujib on that wicket at Marvel could be devastating, and we know how good de Kock is. Um, so I like those picks. They didn't go for their third and fourth picks because they want to try and sign some international players after the draft.
Yep.
And then you got Sydney Thunder went for Alex Hales and Zaman Khan. Obviously, Alex Hales played a lot for the Thunder, so that was no surprises. The Heat, they got Colin Munro, Sam Billings, and Paul Walter, the England player. And then finally, the Scorchers went for Zach Crawley. We all know what he can do. Nightmares from the Ashes. And Laurie Evans, who, of course, was their wonder pick from the last couple of seasons. So overall, not bad, I think, for the WBBL, the BBL draft. Not too many surprises. Some of those clubs are going to sign some more internationals. I think there's some clubs that want to know who's going to go and play in the sort of Emirates T20 league that starts
Yep.
mid-January.
Mid-January, is it? Maybe. Yeah.
I
I
think
think.
it's like January
Yeah.
18th or 19th. So,
That's
for
right.
example, I
Yeah.
think Rashid Khan is already told the Strikers he's leaving around then, so he's available
Yep.
sort of for 8 of their 10 games and none of the finals. So, look, what I'm not. I don't love the Big Bash draft. Like, I think it's a good idea and it'll get better, but it certainly doesn't have a lot of the excitement that, say, an IPL draft has, because most clubs seems to
Well,
get what they want.
they do, but it's also the eligibility of the player and how long they're going to be there for. I mean, we're still uncertain with some of the T20 competitions. I mean, we saw with South Africa, they were trying to run their T20 comp the first time it fell through. So is that comp going to run?
Well, it went
So
last year, so I think it'll happen this year. But
yeah, well, exactly, and that sort of clashes. So if that clashes, then what's the story with Quinton de Kock? Like, there's just so many
exactly.
questions about this. So yeah, I don't know about the draft.
That's why
Look,
it takes away from it. That's why it takes away from the draft, because you'd be like, "Oh, great, they signed someone. Oh, for 4 games, wow."
yes, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
all right, and
And
then looking at the WBBL draft, I think the big one is Marizana Cap was signed by the Thunder from from the Scorchers, where she played so well for them, and I think she's the biggest signing of the WBBL draft because she's such a good player. She excelled for the Sixers when she played in Sydney. So I think that was the biggest moment of the draft. Sophie Devine stayed with the Scorchers. Alice Capsey, the England star, went to the Melbourne Stars. The Hurricanes got Shabnam Ismail, a great player. This is the first ever WBBL draft, so it was
draft, yep,
historic. Amelia Kerr went back to the Heat. And the Sydney Sixers signed Chloe Tryon, the
yes,
South African all-rounder who bowls some good left-arm spin to try and plug that gap left by the injury to Sophie Eccleston. So I thought the WBBL draft, again, a bit like the BBL draft, not too exciting, but that little go from the
probably.
Thunder to get Cap was the big one.
Yeah, probably not the timing for the draft. I think everyone's still sort of in that footy mode, and how many eyeballs are going to be on the cricket maybe I think it needs to happen now because you're sort of chasing players, which are going to start maybe, especially WBBL in October.
They need to start drafting Australian players because that would be great to see, clubs battling over Elise Perry or Elisa Healy.
Yeah.
I think that's the next stage. But the draft has been done. Stepping back, still a lot of great talent coming for the Big Bash this year in both the men's and women's competition. I'm not being paid by Cricket Australia to say this, by the way. Despite the challenges of other competitions, I think the WBBL will continue to be the premier women's competition at the moment. And I think in the BBL, now that it's a 10-game competition, you'll still get these players staying for longer. The unfortunate thing is you might get to the finals like we had last year, and it'll be like, where are all the international players gone? And unlike last season, you can't plug the gap with Australian Test players. That's what worked so well for last year. All the international players left, but the Test players for Australia became available, and we had those magic moments where Steve Smith was able to score a couple of hundreds, and so I just don't think we'll get that because the Test side's playing in late January.
Yeah, well, Steve Smith finally went through all the hoops to play. That was the challenge.
And let him play finally. All right. We're going to take our final break, and then we'll be back. I've got one thing I want to raise with Gav, and we've also, when we come out of the break, you'll hear my interview with Australia's new leg spinning star, Tanveer Sagar. G'day, Tanveer. Congratulations on your performance. Just wondering if your mind sort of looked ahead a little bit to possibly playing in the World Cup in India and what that would mean to you.
I'm usually not a person to think about the future. Obviously, I know there's a lot of people talking about it and there's preliminary squads and stuff for it. But obviously that would be an unbelievable thing, especially not playing cricket for 12 months and then coming in, playing a few games in the 100 and now making my debut. It would be an unreal 6 months to be a part of. And especially the squad we have is such a strong squad. I do see it tough to break into, but playing back home where my parents are from and where the heritage is from, I think it would be an unbelievable thing playing in the World Cup, playing against such good teams and showcasing what I can do there as well will be, I think, quite an amazing experience. It will be definitely surreal, but as I said before at the start of this, I like to stay in the present as much as I can and just worry about that later on if it does come to it.
And what did your parents say after the performance overnight?
Oh, super proud. They were obviously, unfortunately, couldn't be over here, but they were watching back home. I know it was late back home. It's 2 or 3 in the morning, but they were super proud, super happy. I know even if they're at work today or have been at work today, they would have been super happy and had an amazing day, and I really am grateful for all the sacrifices they've made.
And just last one from me, what sort of relationship do you and Adam Zampa have? How much is he helping you? How much are you working together?
I've had a great relationship with Zorb. He's been very helpful. He's more than open to and friendly to chat about anything, and every time I see him, we always have a good chat, even if it's not about leg spin, just anything in general at all. And he's very nice. He's helped me with a couple of things that I've been working on as I'm trying to develop more skills in the white ball area. And I think Zorb is a great person to talk to, even if it's just about general cricket or if it's about leg spin, off-field stuff, whatever it is. He's been very helpful and very open.
Tanveer, tell me, which leg spinners inspired you to take up the craft when you were younger?
I guess there isn't a leg spinner that made me bowl leg spin. I used to bowl pace. I think everyone knows when I was in my junior days and then up until 12, I thought I bowled quick, but I was actually quite slow. Mm-hmm. And then I changed to off spin, but then my fingers weren't big enough to actually spin the ball and get over it. So then I changed to leg spin, and then I think because I didn't have anything after that, I just stuck with it.
And when you sort of look at other leg spin, is there anyone you try and emulate or model yourself on, like a Kumble or a McGill, Warne?
I think there's many great leg spinners going around now, and I get to talk to a few now that I've been to a few franchise leagues now, and I really, even if they're not similar to the way I bowl, I just really like talking to them and absorbing information. Like Rashid Khan, I love talking to. Even I got to meet Shadab while I was in America. It was great chatting to him just about leg spin or tactics and bowling technical work. But I really like the way Yuzi Chahal bowls from India. I think I'm really similar to him, the way we bowl, speeds, etc. So I always try and watch each leggy and how they bowl, and even Adil Rashid in England, like obviously Zorb here. Like I just try and watch what they do, try and see if they do anything different or little subtle things that make a big difference. Because end of the day, all leg spinners are trying to be attacking and get every batsman out, but I'm trying to obviously learn as I'm growing now and develop so I can have more skills and more artillery. And so when I am obviously given more opportunities, that I'm ready to go and trying to dominate and make my captain's job easier.
And is the ultimate dream to wear the baggy green and play Test cricket, or do you more, focus on the white ball game?
Definitely a dream in the back of my head is to get the bag green. I'd love to play Test cricket for Australia. I'd love to play one-day cricket for Australia. I'm so grateful I get to play T20 cricket as I did yesterday. But I think right now I'm just very happy with the opportunities I'm getting, being so grateful to get picked in the squad after not playing for 12 months and then getting this opportunity now. I think I'm just very happy with where I am right now.
Good stuff. You should be. Thank you. Thanks, Dave. Good. Well, that was Tanveer Sangha after his magical debut, taking 4 for 31. You're listening to the Cricket Unfiltered podcast. Gav, what did you think of those comments from Tanveer? Lovely young man.
I think the one that stood out for me is I think he's defined his style of bowling. When you asked him about what kind of leg spinner, and he said Uzi Chahal, which means he feels he has he wants to keep a bit of loop in his bowling, with something which is different to Adam Zampa. Adam Zampa is almost, I look at it as a bit of a, he bowls into the pitch and back of the length, and his accuracy and hitting that sort of 4 or 5 meter mark with a flat trajectory is almost his strength. While I think Tanveer will go for some runs, and he'll probably change his line. He'll get a bit of a loop as well. And I think I have this fantastic record about Chahal, where I think when he actually came through to play for India and became a phenomenal part of their success, where I think there's a couple of IPL matches, seasons where every time he got hit for a six, I think 80% of the time, the next ball he got a wicket. So that's something, I don't know if Tanveer's spoken to him about that, but it just shows. And sometimes Chahal's not that standard. He will change his line. He bowls sort of some balls more, probably attacks the more the middle and leg stump rather than bowling outside the off stump. So not just a containing spinner or a attacking leg spinner. And I think that's good to know that Tanveer is realizing what his craft is, and he's not trying to replicate Rashid Khan, but he's actually found out the identity on or the type of bowler that he sort of wants to be, or he's trying to be.
Mm. Yeah, and what a fantastic story. Immigrated to this country from India, now, knocking on the door of the Australian side, but it's made his T20.
Went to East Hills Boys High School, Menners. They all make them all down there.
Same school as you.
Same school as me. Lots of good cricketers. Steve Waugh, Mark Waugh.
What happened to you?
Oh, we got to give other people a go.
Yeah, great to speak to Tanveer, and he's got a huge career ahead of him. And nice to talk to him. All right, a couple of bit of cricket news before we wrap it up and get on with Can't Let It Go. Just want to touch on the sad passing of former Zimbabwean all-rounder Heath Streak, who passed away over the weekend at the age of 49 from cancer. Wonderful cricketer and far too young to pass away. So we send our condolences to him, to his family, and everyone affected by the loss. But I was lucky enough to see him play a lot when I was growing up, especially in that 1999 World Cup where Zimbabwe, punched above their weight. And he was a great all-rounder. 216 Test wickets, 239 one-day international wickets, 499 first-class wickets. Also made six first-class centuries, 1 Test century, and very sad passing.
Yeah, really sad news. I think it was a coach for a while as well, but I think his wife's put some photos on social media, and he probably didn't look in the best shape as well. So it's a very sad news, and much loved, and like you said, that that late 90s, early 2000s Zimbabwe team. My God, Menners, I reckon if we had the similar team in the World Test Championships, I think they would upset a few teams that will really push some of the the teams going around at the moment. But that was different generation. But yeah, very sad news.
Very sad indeed. All right, let's get into the segment we like to end the show with, which is Can't Let It Go. That little bit of cricket news you just can't let go through to the keeper. Gav, you can start us off. What's your Can't Let It Go for this week?
Well, the Can't Let It Go is the Asia Cup is being played in Sri Lanka, Menners, and I can't let it go because they're playing in in Kandy, where they know this is the monsoon season. This is where the matches get affected. There was a lot of talk of moving them to a different place, like could be Colombo, could be Dambulla, could be a different part of Sri Lanka, which probably don't get affected. Now, here it is, India, Pakistan, one of the great rivalries. We've had, Bangladesh also take on Sri Lanka, which is sort of curtailed by the weather. Surely, if you know it's going to rain, you got to play at a different location, Menners.
They'll never play cricket in Sydney then. So for those that missed out, I think the rain actually saved India because India were bowled out for 266. Some great bowling by Pakistan. Shaheen Shah Afridi took a few wickets. And then the rain came and sort of saved India's skin there because Pakistan might have chased that down pretty easily. Just a quick one. Do you think there's a chance that we'll ever see an India versus Pakistan test at the MCG? Crash and Horn wrote something about it last week. What's your gut feeling?
I don't think it's going to match any broadcasters' times. That's where the revenue is. I mean, I think Crash and Benny sort of alluded it has to be an afternoon, day-night test match, but that's 9 a.m. in India. Not many people probably watching that. Unless it could be on when maybe it's some sort of
started
festival.
Like 4 p.m. and played till midnight. I still reckon you'd fill the stadium.
Well, can they keep the lights on at the MCG past 1 o'clock? I don't know. Maybe
That's probably not.
Maybe they have to ring up the council and maybe ask them. I don't know. They have to get all the sort of legalities right for that to happen.
Would be great though. All right, my Can't Let It Go is sticking with an article from Ben Horn from News Limited. He writes, Alex Carey has opened up about the cruel and vicious online attacks on his family, which followed the controversial dismissal of Johnny Bairstow in the Ashes. Alex Carey talked about how his wife was harassed online and abused. Even his kids were. And Alex Carey said he didn't take it too long. Ben Horn reported that there was a relentless stream of vile abuse aimed at his and his wife Eloise and his young children by faceless online trolls. Look, the England fans aren't alone in this. There'd be fans from all around the world that troll people, but it just continues. What I ascertain that Australia won the moral Ashes because our fans were a lot better behaved. Their fans carry on like pork chops when we were over there. This is further evidence of us. Alex Carey is the nicest guy in Australian cricket. You should never be targeting someone's family. You can make comments about a dismissal if you want. But yeah, I just think that is disgraceful.
I can't wait for you to host this podcast at Edgbaston or even the Holly Stand. Well, I think that's your ultimate aim for the.
No, I'm going to the Barmy Army next Ashes. The trumpeter Simon Finch is a big listener. He leads the trumpet, and next Ashes I'm going down there. I'll tell them face to face, like they'll all be so drunk they'll probably try and fight me. They'll be like knee deep in pints, singing vile songs. I'm going down. I'm going down to take it. So the podcast could be over at that point.
You might be on your own there, Menners.
I'll wave to you. You can wave to me as I'm like pulled apart. But yes, no, that's my Can't Let It Go. The England fans further disgracing themselves. All right, well, Gav, thanks so much for the podcast. I want to tell the listeners, so last week I dropped 2 interviews, Jackson Bird and Jenny Gunn. So talked a lot about Jackson Bird's test career. We also talked about his move up to the New South Wales team. And then also interviewed one of the England legends, Jenny Gunn, who played for England, I think 260 times almost. Fantastic all-rounder, won multiple Ashes and World Cups. So go back and listen to those Menners Masterclass. They're great interviews. Also, there's I said in the last show, but the email address is in the show notes. Send us in your World Cup squads. We'd love to read some of those messages out. And also, if you want to support the show on Patreon, the link is in the show notes. Gav, where can the listeners connect with you? And do you want to promote anything?
Well, I'm promoting the podcast. That's why I'm here, Menners. Of course, that's all I need for now. Cricket Unfiltered is the place to listen to me. Of course, there's a couple of radio shows to call up me during the week, or sometimes when there's something happening in cricket. But want to listen? You know my Twitter handle at Gav_cricket. Look forward to doing more with you on the podcast. Of course, commentary coming up as well. It's going to be a big summer.
Indeed. All right, Gav. Well, great to talk to you, listeners. Thanks for listening. And the plan is we'll probably be back next week with a full episode. We might catch up later in the week if we can get someone to jump on with us. But yeah, back to the regular recording roster where we'll be recording early in the week every week. And then when summer really ramps up, Gav and I will be doing 2 episodes a week. And hopefully we're going to announce a new a 4th co-host, because Jaleesa is still part of the show. She's just taken leave for the last 6 months, but she's still part of the show. So we'll be able to announce a 4th voice, hopefully in the next 2 weeks. Very exciting, current first-class cricketer. All right, listeners. Thanks, Gav. Thank you.